Guys, I'm so excited about the information which we have now. It kind of resonates with the information which we had previously, the news and updates that connects it well. Now, if you really focus and digest the information Brad is putting out, that's gonna surprise many of us. I'm sure many will be surprised and many will be happy about holding XRP, because I would like to highlight that Brad stated there would be a dip first and then a massive rally, and the price actually dipped. Now, when we connect Brad's discussion and Corey's interview, we get to see that it kind of correlates well enough. And when we actually look at, this one, it kind of concretes the viewpoint that it is happening. The debasement of some fiat currencies is happening based on distributed ledger technology's common currency, a common currency on the distributed ledger technology. And again, the safe haven pump and the idea elaborated by Brad in that discussion resonates well with Gold Telegraph. So that's some critical data and facts to digest in an appropriate manner. Welcome to the Scientific Investor channel, where we discuss crypto and science behind investing regularly. Now, along with those information, I also have related market updates which kind of broadens our knowledge base, and it also highlights the change of wind in the market direction, and these are kind of reasonably excellent information supporting the fundamentals of this space. Now, when we look at Brad's interview, this is actually shared by Greenex and Cham, you know him. So I'll actually play a little area, not the entire video, it's just 13 minutes, but we'll focus on the important parts of that. Say here in the first minute, Brad actually talks about a recession or even a giant depression coming in.
Economic outlook. It's unbelievable to me. If you go back in time to the global financial crisis, sometimes called the GFC, unemployment filings over 18 months of what was considered that recession totaled 15 million unemployment filings. We've been, in this pandemic experience, and there's been 30 million in 6 to 8 weeks versus 18 months or 15 million.
The way Brad explains that and the data which he presents, for me, that's like he's showing what we had in 2008 was something small, and what's coming ahead is going to be a huge one in terms of recession or economic depression. And after 2008, we know that Bitcoin and the crypto was born, and it was actually born to fulfill those issues which the banking industry created at that time. Now, when we actually move ahead in the same interview, and when we look around the time, say 2015, you can actually see he's talking about debasement of the fiat currencies.
The future, and I think will, I believe, result in the debasement of fiat currencies. And you are seeing that in some emerging markets already, where the exchange rates have started to shift. But even here in the United States, it's a real factor. One visualization of this, and in history, looking back, is on the next slide, is something we saw happen in the Weimar Republic, which was what we now call Germany after World War I.
So that is like pointing towards hyperinflation and showing this is going to happen again. So the intelligent guys, they understand this, and that's why in the same topic, he actually discussed about safe haven, where to store your money. So that talk is really impressive.
That in mind. One of the things I will also talk about as we get things started is, as I was talking about the kind of debasement of currencies, when we saw in the global financial crisis, kind of 2008, 2010, depending on what time scale you want to use, you saw a lot of new deficit spending and inflationary dynamics. And that was very positive for gold. As you see in this chart, gold was up about 100% over the years after the global financial crisis. And I think you're going to see crypto play a role like digital gold. And there's some data to support that as well. So the next slide talks about some specific examples where crypto as digital gold is kind of gaining momentum. It's also important to remember that Bitcoin was born in the wake of that global financial crisis of 2008, 2009. Gold has been a safe haven asset in lots of ways. It did drop during the beginning of the 2008 liquidity crisis, but then you saw it make a big run. And I think we're going to see a similar trajectory and similar opportunity around the crypto market overall.
So considering what's coming in terms of economical ride or the roller coaster, he is pointing out that the safe haven assets are going to increase in demand. And that also points out that it is crypto, digital gold. And he also states that it is a safe haven and it will kind of follow the same trajectory of that of gold, like how it happened in the previous crisis. So the point here is it may first dip. At the beginning it may dip and then it will have a massive rally. Now we all understood that the investment is actually coming into the crypto. Now next area which he points out is how or why they are actually considering which asset to be invested in. Like you're going for safe haven. Now yes, gold, silver, such things are there. If you're coming into the digital world, then they are going into some different assets which have its own perspectives.
It's just shocking to me that we haven't heard more attention around the impact of the energy consumption of Bitcoin and Ether. There's some news earlier this year talking about one Bitcoin transaction is the equivalent of almost 1 month's energy consumption of a US household.
We have stated that previously, right? That is so bad. And he is highlighting that XRP is green, it's sustainable, and it's frictionless to do the transaction. So as an asset, it has higher value. So the value proposition laid out by XRP, the asset, is much more than any other digital asset available as of now. So now when we move further ahead in the interview here around 7:20, he talked about digital assets being embraced by the central banks.
And more will happen digitally, and I generally think that's good for us. I think you're seeing central banks more than ever thinking about how digital assets could be used. That also is, I think, good for us as we work with some of the central banks around the world. On the next slide, it's worth spending a minute in understanding how I think that you're going to see another wave of correspondent banks de-risking. So internally, I think everyone understands well, one of the key things that we are solving through on-demand liquidity is the mitigating the need to pre-fund. And
so in the beginning of that's around 7:20, he talked about digital assets and central banks, how they're actually moving in. So along with that, the value prospects of commercial banks connecting through the correspondent banking network using the nostro-vostro relationship and pre-funding. Now he's talking that they are de-risking and moving into the on-demand liquidity. So it's going to happen again. And he also points out around 7:45 there that another wave of de-risking is going to come. So de-risking in that aspect, you can say one bank has, say for example, 500 billion set as their nostro-vostro holdings around the world. So in that aspect, if they are de-risking, says they can actually take out 50% of that. And if they want, from that 50%, they can use 10% for on-demand liquidity, meaning they can actually use it to send money without having that nostro-vostro account relationship there. Now, when we actually move further ahead, say in the video, if we go around 9:30, so here he actually points out liquidity, and that's the key thing of on-demand liquidity and the volatility of fiat currencies. So in this aspect, whatever he states here is kind of getting connected to this one, what we can see here, like IMF has already prepared a replacement for dollar, and it's for those fiat currencies which is so volatile with dollar. Now that will be the case when, for example, that recession kicks in. So if you connect both of them, it kind of really resonates well.
As we went through some of the volatility over the last handful of weeks, is you saw in mid-March some really dramatic volatility in the Philippine peso, where actually some of our customers, the only way they were able to get liquidity into and out of the Philippines was through ODL. We certainly did have strong momentum as we kind of finished up Q1, just to give you a couple data points.
So now if you see that in that aspect, you can clearly state that the currency volatility is actually coming ahead. So if that is happening, say for Philippine peso, Argentinian, so even Indian rupee and others are being volatile. And if you look at the history, you can see last time when collapsed, the crisis was happening and the fiat currencies was kind of collapsing. South Korean won was, it fluctuated so high based on dollar, and that creates a issue for financial institutions to do that transaction, to do the payments. So for that, now as he explained there in that example, ODL is the best suited thing and they are actually going into it. Now the next thing to note in this interview is around here, say that is 11:15. He's talking about XRP and more regulatory clarity is gonna come in, and then as we move 10 seconds forward in that, he also talks about weak hands being shaken out. So at first he talked about a dip is coming, and at the end he talks about the wheat will be separated from the chaff during this recessionary event. So weak mindset, weak holders, whatever you call, is going to be taken out.
And the build out of 5G mobile networks. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I do think a priority for us throughout Q2 and really the balance of 2020 will be to continue to push to get more clarity, frankly, not just for XRP and all of the participants in the XRP ecosystem, but really for crypto more broadly. Moving to the next slide, look, there's no question that a lot of uncertainty remains, and I think this downturn will separate the wheat from the chaff. This is an expression from my roots, having grown up in Kansas. Our top priority will continue to be all of you, to make sure that we do whatever we can to make sure people are safe.
So with all those information in our mind, here in a previous interview of Corey Johnson, he also talked about store of value. And when we go through this interview, he actually discussed about the price of Bitcoin, the price of Ethereum, the price of XRP, how they actually fluctuated. So when they are actually looking at, the institutional houses, say this is from Yahoo Finance interview, and in that aspect, they are actually looking at gold and crypto asset together as safe haven assets. Now, yes, if you look at gold, it also dipped during the last recession. First it dipped, then the brains, those who guys have brains, accumulated that at bottom, and then it skyrocketed. It kind of doubled. So that most of the ETFs and other stuffs trading goes for gold. It will be, say, leveraged. It can be into 2, 5, depends upon how you trade, right? So if it actually doubled in price, that's 100%, and if you are using leverage, that can be actually the profit in 200%, 500%. It depends on your leverage, right? So now in crypto space, you're holding that asset and it kind of goes asymmetrically upside, and what is being shown here is kind of pointing towards the same direction, because the replacement of dollar during those kind of recessionary events and currency volatility will be there. And it's why I'm saying this, because when we are kind of doing that, they're actually looking at a distributed ledger technology. So in this distributed ledger technology and a currency to come in to reduce the volatility and to bridge all the different currencies across the world. So connecting that back with what Brad stated here, that central banks are embracing digital asset. Okay, I agree. I saw XRP in many central bank papers which I presented here, say for example different Federal Reserve or even the World Bank, IMF, BIS, all these institutions are also highlighting digital asset and precisely XRP for its use case. So coming back to the topic, they are actually going to do this. Then this is kind of the direction of traditional investors, say the elderly investors who are not that much into technology. They will be looking at gold, and gold is actually going up all the year. If you look at the chart, you will actually understand that. Now, along with those information, when we see these, it should be kind of concreting what we are staying for, because in here we can actually see XRP nuts showing that the cloud technology is actually boosting itself, and this is for representation for RippleNet, how the money is actually coming from one bank to another bank and how it can be so frictionless. And here it is highlighting that Ripple's cloud service is being embraced. And in the next tweet here, it shows MoneyGram is gonna work together with Google and Amazon. So these are next generation cloud services which are gonna be out there. And if we look clearly, we can actually see this one. First, bank successfully migrated to cloud solution. So the network is actually going live, and it's kind of, the benefit of being in the cloud network is that, as you saw here, it's going to be frictionless. You don't have to have those much of time requirements to do all those stuff. You can actually do that in a minimized time requirement. Along with that, whenever we are seeing DLT enabled payment networks, here we can see a Ripple and a Stellar, Finality, Visa and all. But at the same time, keep in mind this: distributed ledger technology payment networks. And what you saw here, distributed ledger technology is in place from last 2 years, which is being stated by IMF. And if you look here, IMF is actually working with who and what asset works on that distributed ledger technology which IMF is proposing. So if that's happening, that's going to be so huge. Now this is another tweet from Binance that doesn't have to do anything with what we talked before. It's just showing you that India wants crypto, meaning that's it's 1.3 billion in population, but at least 10% of that if they're actually coming in, because the country is now, they can't even go in gold. The problem, it's, even though it is democracy, it is kind of stupidity there. You can't keep a certain amount of gold in your home. They'll come take it away. That's kind of, you can't buy that much gold. And there is restriction, like if you're a female, you can hold this. If you're a male, you can't do this. So they are now saying what to do with your own money. So the chances are it is coming, or it will be coming into crypto soon. I would really like to thank all the scientific investor family members who came in. Now we hit 6,000 subscribers. So that's kind of growing. Our community is growing, and at the same time, scientific investor family is also growing. And I really appreciate you guys staying together and supporting the channel. So if you like the content, please do hit that like button, support the content.